Shalom, this is Bill. In our last explainer, we worked through the two most technical arguments hiding in Leviticus 11. Today's objection, though, doesn't come from a verse at all. It comes from a comparison. And it's one that challenges how we actually apply these ancient texts to the reality of the food we eat today. Somebody once pointed out to me that certain figs can't ripen without help from a wasp. The wasp climbs inside, can't find its way back out, and dies there, inside the fruit. The question follows naturally. If a dead creature sitting inside your food is what makes that food unclean, why would anyone eat that fig but call the same principle disqualifying for honey?
My job has been to hand you what I've found and let you look for yourself. So let's look at this one together.
The first thing worth knowing is that this isn't every fig. It is one specific kind. The variety that actually needs a wasp is called the Smyrna fig. Almost every other fig you've ever eaten, black mission, brown turkey, cadota, produces fruit entirely on its own. No insect required ever. So right away, the objection is narrower than it first sounds. And that narrow variety has gotten narrower still. Growing the Smyrna fig in America became so difficult that most farms simply gave up on it, replacing it with fig varieties bred to taste exactly the same without needing a wasp at all. What is left of the true wasp-dependent crop mostly comes from overseas now, especially from Turkey.
Here is something that surprised me when I dug into this. Nobody wrote down in any real scientific detail what was actually happening inside that fig until 1882. Go back further than that, and you find people who noticed the process, but not the death. Herodotus described this same practice, Caprification, more than 400 years before Yeshua walked the earth. He mentions the insect entering the fig. He says the fruit ripens because of it, but he never mentions the insect dying there. Neither the Torah, nor the Mishnah, nor the Talmud says a single word about it. And the rabbis who wrote the Mishnah were paying very close attention to fruit, examining it carefully for anything that might crawl inside. Still, nothing. That silence held for over 2,000 years. It held until a German zoologist named Paul Meyer, working at a research station in Naples, finally published the first real scientific study of it.
Even American growers had to learn this biological reality the hard way, and not that long ago. When they first tried planting this fig here, the trees would flower and the fruit would just fall off before it ever ripened. Nobody could explain why. For almost 20 years this went on, until someone finally brought live wasps across the ocean to make it work.
And even the people who do permit eating this fig can't agree on why it's permissible. Two different rabbis tackled this question 20 years apart and landed on two entirely different answers. First, one rabbi writing in 1997 argued that the wasp stops counting as a whole creature the moment its wings tear off going in, so eating the fig doesn't count as eating the insect. Later, another writer offered a second, distinct explanation, that an enzyme in the fig, called Ficin, simply dissolves whatever is left of the wasp.
That second explanation doesn't actually hold up under its own chemistry. Ficin is a protease. Its biological job is breaking down protein and soft tissue. An insect's outer shell is made of chitin, and breaking that down takes a completely different enzyme, called a chitinase. Ficin was never built for that job. So, as the fig ripens and swells, that insect doesn't simply disappear. What is left is broken into small fragments of shell, still there, embedded in the fruit. Which brings me back to what the Torah actually asks in the first place.
Anything on which any of them falls when they are dead shall be unclean. Leviticus 11:32.
Any food in it that could be eaten, on which water comes, shall be unclean. Leviticus 11:34. Neither verse asks whether something can be pulled back out. Neither asks whether it is visible to the naked eye. The question was always contact with death, not whether you can retrieve the evidence afterward.
And that fits something I keep coming back to throughout this whole study. Yahweh never wrote out an exhaustive list of every animal, every fruit, every dish, for every generation to come. What he gave instead was a method to test things for ourselves. Fins and scales, a hoof that splits, a cud that is chewed, a dead, unclean creature that has touched your food. He handed his people the ability to see and asked them to actually use it.
I want to end on something more personal, and I want to be careful how I say it, because it is a thought, not a conclusion. I think about the leaves Adam and Eve reached for right after they realized they were exposed, in that same chapter that names a tree they had been told to leave alone. Scripture never actually tells us which tree that was. But this question isn't one I invented. In the Talmud, one rabbi, Nehemiah, suggested it was a fig tree, reasoning that the very thing they sinned with became the thing that covered them. That's in Sanhedrin 70b.
And I think about the one tree Yeshua is ever recorded cursing. May no one ever eat fruit from you again. Mark 11:14. He walked up to a fig tree, found leaves, and no fruit. Scripture doesn't tell us anything more than that. Neither will I.
I can't tell you whether any of that connects to what we've just been talking about. What I actually know is smaller than that. One kind of fig, and only one, comes into being through the death of a creature Torah calls unclean, right there in the food itself. I don't know if that's the fruit in the garden or the tree Yeshua found empty. I do know enough to make a decision for myself, and I've made it. That particular fig, I've set aside.
If anything, it sharpens the whole point of this study. The more we're willing to actually look, the better we get at telling the clean from the unclean at all. You are to distinguish between the holy and the common, and between the unclean and the clean. Leviticus 10:10.